Back in 2019, when Donald Trump suspected that now President Joe Biden would be his 2020 opponent, as I'm sure you're aware, Trump engaged in a scheme and got his allies to engage in an endeavor that would define, at least in part, Trump's presidency. And we've dealt with the repercussions of that endeavor to this day. Trump really wanted to dig up dirt on Biden, hoping he could find something or at least muddy the waters enough to hurt Trump, or hurt Biden politically, and thus Trump would win the 2020 election. That was the hope. He tasked Rudy Giuliani with doing that. Rudy Giuliani tasked a man by the name of Lev Parnas. And Lev Parnas went around the world, has been described as Giuliani's and thus Trump's stooge, went into the Oval Office, and specifically went to Ukraine to try to dig up dirt on Biden, to substantiate, or if not, then at least find things that were blurry enough where it would make it look like Biden engaged in wrongdoing with his son Hunter Biden while Biden was vice president. Much of this we've talked about, we've debunked these claims for now years, but something really interesting happened. Lev Parnas eventually, someone with a criminal past, but eventually felt remorse for the fact that he was engaging in a smear campaign. He was participating in a dishonest endeavor that sought not the truth, but political advantage at all costs. And Rachel Maddow directed a documentary about Lev Parnas called Russia with Lev, from Russia with Lev, I should say. And it goes through all the terrible things he did to try to harm Biden politically. It goes through his remorse. And one really notable part that illustrates this is him sitting down with the main character other than Joe Biden in many of these conspiracy theories, Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden, someone who has a very troubled past himself, dealing with tax-related and a gun when he was on drugs-related criminal charges, conviction. And this was a really powerful scene where the two of them sit across from each other. Lev Parnas was tasked with destroying Hunter Biden's life so that they could get to President Joe Biden. And now he's apologizing. And this documentary nicely goes through what is one of the biggest scandals of the last decade, which is not Biden engaged in corruption, as Republicans try to convince us, but the fabrication of a corruption story for the purposes of leveling the playing field between Trump and Biden. We've had impeachment proceedings that failed over and over from James Comer's committee, the Oversight Committee, for years now. And all of this prompted by Trump tasking Giuliani, who tasked Parnas, to find this. And now Parnas is saying it was all ridiculous. Here's this powerful moment.
I gave him a lot of ammunition.
Yeah.
Addiction is never an excuse, but it's an explanation. It's an explanation why I ended up in some of the rooms that I ended up in, doing things that I'm ashamed of today.
The best thing that could have ever happened to me was getting arrested. As crazy as that sounds.
It really takes a big person to not only admit that they're wrong, but to do so in public and to do it on the stage you did.
Lev Parnas was the centerpiece of a bomb-throwing congressional hearing on the Biden impeachment inquiry this week.
Today, I admit my own wrongdoings. I have been a convicted federal election campaign and fraud crimes and served my sentence. Despite rigorous attempts by those in power to silence me, I will be silenced no longer.
To go in front of a hostile committee in Congress that you know has no compunction to break every rule to embarrass you, and to put yourself in that position just so you could tell the truth.
The American people have been lied to by Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and various cohorts of individuals in government and media positions. They created falsehoods to serve their own interests, knowing it would undermine the strength of our nation.
One of the hardest things to do in life is to make amends. And it's one of the principles of like the program I follow in terms of my own addiction. But to do it the way that you've done it on TV in public while you're getting the goddamn hell beat out of you.
Sounds like everyone here today, the only one working for a Russian oligarch was you.
You didn't listen to the truth, because if they would listen to the
question,
truth, you
the
guys
question,
would've been all
Mr.
in
Gates
jail.
had is
They didn't
for
want to hear the
Mr.
truth. You can't handle the
Delano.
truth, Matt Gates.
What I saw was somebody with just an enormous reserve of character when it really counted.
Today, I ask you to consider the following. In nearly a year traveling the world and interviewing officials in different countries, I found precisely zero evidence of the Biden's corruption in Ukraine. The only information ever pushed on the Bidens in Ukraine has come from one source, and one source only: Russia and Russian agents.
And so, bottom of my heart, I promise you, you're a hero to me. I was,
Thank you so much.
you know, I was really, really.
We'll be right back to the video just really quickly. If you're not already, I would appreciate you clicking that subscribe button. We are really close to 1 million subscribers. You can help us get there. Easy, free way. And then we do have merch at lukebeasleymerch.com with Harris as a promo code. You can get free shipping. Super cool election themed merch. Check it out. Back to the video. Before we get to the big climax of this scene, which is Parnas sort of breaking down in tears and apologizing to Hunter Biden. Key quote there. Found no evidence of the Biden corruption. President Joe Biden, it's been demonstrated over and over again, just didn't do the things that the Marjorie Greens and James Comers want him to have done. He's just not corrupt like your guy, and any amount of fabrications won't change that. We saw month after month, thousands of dollars after thousands of dollars, investigation, witness after witness. Republicans, in the last couple of years, we're still dealing with this, going all the way back to 2019. Republicans trying to dig stuff up and pretend like there was something when there wasn't. I covered it every step of the way, as you know, if you're a regular, longtime viewer. And they acted like it was for some justice or accountability. But what did they do when they got to the end of that investigation? Did they bring impeachment to a vote? No. Why not? James Comer released a report somewhat recently saying this is everything we uncovered. The same rehashed stuff. Distortions, misinterpretations, and outright lies. And said, this is the strongest case for impeachment potentially in the history of the country. Then why aren't you calling for an impeachment vote? He's not, because he know he would fail even in a Republican majority House. Because at least some Republicans need like a scrap of evidence to do something like impeachment. And Lev Parnas represents just how absurd this crazy, we would use this phrase given how much Trump has misused it, but how much this witch hunt, or how much of a witch hunt it was, I should say. That's what Lev Parnas represents, and he's able to come and speak about that, saying, no matter how much I digged, I would find nothing except for stuff that was being, inaccurate stuff that was being fed to us by, we've now learned, Russian intelligence, or Trump, or Giuliani, bad actors pushing bad information. And it's stunning, given what I just mentioned, the fact that Republicans really do believe, or they pretend to believe, that Trump has been subjected to so many unfair investigations and witch hunts, when they've been participating in one of the greatest political hit jobs, smears, promoted by, yes, as much as the strong Russia triggers them, including by Russian intelligence, something that has never been done to the heights that it was against Biden, against Trump. There's always been credible evidence that then sometimes can, like with some of the allegations relating to Russia, as it pertains to the 2016 election, overblown, misstated, things can be wrong, and people should be judged for that when they do state things incorrectly. But there was at least a kernel of truth. Here, time and time again, they didn't even have a kernel. Here's the final part of this.
Proud. I was proud of you.
Everything was for the ultimate benefit of Donald Trump and thereby Vladimir Putin, who used this narrative to manipulate the public ahead of the 2020 elections. Sadly, they are still doing this today as we approach the 2024 elections.
Hunter, I want you to know I wrote this book to tell the truth about what happened during the Trump administration. He used your battle with addiction for his own agenda to hurt you and your family and your father. You were a casualty in all of this. I regret very truly my decision to work with those that tried to bring you and your family down. I will do everything in my power to clear your name going forward.
Thank you, my friend. You know, I'll treasure this. And one thing I've learned is that truth and love always prevail. May take a little while, but the fact of the matter is we get up every day and we do the next right thing, we win.
And I'm sorry for that.
Yeah. Say,
Was it me?
hey, I'm proud of you. Listen. We get a second chance.
Yeah.
Both of
You
us.
do. That's right.
Both of us.
Both of us.
Yeah.
That was a fist bump and a half. The sound that made was epic. So credit too, with all of his sins. Credit to Lev Parnas for now coming out and saying, I was the guy. Hey, James Comer. Hey, Jim Jordan. All the things you're saying and alleging and trying to attach to Biden, I was the guy tasked with finding that. And you know what I found? It was a hit job. It was the very thing you falsely assert is being done to Trump. And what's pretty depraved is seeing how willing, for the sake of getting to Biden, some of these MAGA Republicans are to do anything to anyone in the way. And in this case, you saw at the beginning of that clip, Hunter Biden saying he gave them a lot of ammunition with all of the things he's done wrong, with all of the character failures of him in his past. He did set up a nice villain for MAGA. But that doesn't, so I appreciate that that's being stated by him, but that doesn't justify lying about him and then about his father. And it doesn't justify exploiting details that, while salacious, weren't relevant to Joe Biden. The amount of nude photographs I've seen of on national TV of Hunter Biden unwillingly because of Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's too many. I've said this before, but MAGA people have DM'd me nude photos of Hunter Biden, I guess, alleging these with a prostitute or something. Why are you sending this? Of him doing drugs, videos of him doing crack. How is that relevant to President Joe Biden? Other than he probably is going to be a part of loving his son as he comes, I don't know how to word it properly, but being there for his son as his son dealt with all of that stuff. But you went anywhere, regardless of business stuff that you're alleging. You just went as low as you could and exploited someone's addiction and incorrect decisions to go after their father. Which, if you want that to be the precedent, where just even if a family member is not given a position in their family's administration, they're just out living their life, and we're just going to dig into their lives and throw that in the face of their family members, I can tell you politics is going to be even more disgusting than already it can be. Here's Rachel Maddow on with Ali Velci respond to this.
I want to get right into it with the executive producer of From Russia with Lev, my colleague Rachel Maddow, who gets to add a new and important moniker to your resume. You are the executive producer of this amazing documentary that we just watched. Congratulations, first of all, my friend.
Thank you, Ali. It feels so great to have it out in the world. I have to just ask you, did you like it?
Not only did I like it, I was set up not to like it. And I don't mean that for any other reason than Lev's a complicated character. And it's a very honest documentary about the complexity of Lev. His wife talks about the complexity of Lev. Lev talks about the complexity of Lev. You had, I believe, the first interview with him all those years ago. So I wasn't sure what I wanted to know about Lev that I didn't already know. And you just stitched the whole thing together in a way that makes me wish I knew all this back then.
Yeah, it does matter that he is a very compelling person.
Yes.
And you can tell this story in lots of different ways. You could tell this story from the perspective of Marie Yovanovitch, the ambassador who was unjustly forced out. You could tell it from the perspective of Zelensky and the way that he was extorted by Trump and the crime against Ukraine that was at the heart of the impeachment, which is the sort of culminating thing here. You could tell it from the perspective of Rudy Giuliani. You could tell it from the perspective of Trump. But to tell it from the perspective of Lev, you get this guy who is obviously a very flawed person. He's very open about the fact that he does have a background where he was a hustler. He was involved with organized crime. He came up in that environment. The whole reason that the characters like Tony Andre were going after him for years is because he had all these legal judgments and debts that people are trying to collect from him. Definitely, not a Boy Scout, but that's also part of the story. That's part of what's so amazing, that he ended up in the White House, that he ended up being tasked to do something by the president.
And she goes on to talk about how that's a side interesting point, how many criminals Trump surrounds himself with, but we'll leave that for a different time. I do really think the biggest takeaway here, aside from just uncovering what has now been a years-long misinformation operation, where so many different people, for their own interests at getting at Biden, jumped into what we've now learned to be just bogus. And so bogus that someone involved in investigating that feels so much guilt that they would participate in a documentary revealing their own flaws in the process. But I think also the big takeaway is, they say it's Democrats who want to steal the election, and then they use that to justify in 2020 trying to steal the election by preventing Biden from coming into office after he won. They say it's Democrats doing a witch hunt against Trump, Trump responsible for a witch hunt against his opponent, President Joe Biden. What's the phrase? Allegations are confessions with these folks. True again. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Support the show by clicking the join button below.